Hey guys, this is Tony Whatley, and you're listening to Awakened Nation with Brad Zales.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zales, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Tony, you're in the green room, brother. You ready for the show?
Let's do this, Brad.
You got it. Hey, I got to give a big shout out to Leah Woodford. She's the one who hooked us up. And I just love your bio. I mean, this is the kind of guest we love on our show. And I'll read your bio real quick. Might as well just dig into it. Tony Whatley became known as the Side Hustle Millionaire after his book with the same title became a #1 bestseller on Amazon. But this book title isn't just fiction. It is based on his actual story. And I can testify to that. You kick butt. So we're going to break this down. Tony once led a successful corporate career for over 25 years, but that is less interesting than the side businesses that he created, which generated millions in profit. This is going to be a great show, folks. Go get your pen and paper. As an active entrepreneur himself, he still owns a few businesses, but his real passion is teaching entrepreneurs how to start, scale, and sell their businesses. Within his podcast and consulting brand, 365 Driven. Welcome to the show, Tony Whatley.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks you for inviting me on. It's an honor to be here, man.
Sure, brother. You and I listen to, I like to do the research before I do the show, and you've got a great background. Your mom was Japanese American, and what was your dad's background?
He's American, Louisiana boy. Yeah, grew up blue collar, went into the military, served in the U.S. Marines, Vietnam War vet, and then when he got out, he worked in the chemical refineries here in the Houston area as the rest of his career.
So they were J-O-B.
Definitely.
Am I correct? Yeah.
Definitely.
And my, I was lucky. You and I have a lot in common because my dad was the first generation of Hungarian immigrant here, and my mom was American. And so my mom had to cook Hungarian food, which is kind of spicy. And so all my friends would come over and they'd be like, can we eat here? They'd have a fourth meal at my house because it was interesting. But that immigration family coming in, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that drives a lot of people when they come to the U.S. There's no bones about it. My dad didn't buy me a helmet for my bicycle. You fall on your head. It's like, well, you shouldn't have done that, dummy. It's those kind of things. So let's start with that beginning.
I think we've all seen the stats. I don't know the actual numbers, but they say that the people that move here or are first generation immigrant children actually have a higher level of overall success, or the odds of success, because they've been raised by a parent or they've experienced it by themselves, some lesser country or some place that was more just restricted from freedoms and having the ability to do things and chase the dreams that they want. Because let's face it, we're the greatest country in the world, because other countries, they watch what we're doing and they want to aspire to be, they hear the American dream and they want to be able to do things without being arrested by their government because they don't agree with them or align with them. And then you got other countries, when you become highly successful, they want to take 75% of your income and distribute to other people. So they really have no incentive to become more successful when they can just fit in, be mediocre, be average, and just get the same, rations as everybody else. So understand that being in the United States is a huge opportunity. And I hate to say it, that most people here squander that opportunity.
I agree with you. I started my first business at 16. And the reason I did that is, don't be impressed. It was really because my father made it so hard to ask for a $20 bill in 1979. It was easier to start a business. And you were out hustling at that age. You were mowing lawns because your parents told you, if you want money, if you want nice things, you got to get up off your ass and do it, right? So tell us, how many jobs did you have when you were young?
When I was 12, I started pushing the lawnmower around the neighborhood and just looking at anything with tall grass. I mean, it's pretty easy lead gen right there. So I go knock on the doors, ask if I could mow their yard for $10. And if they said no, I would look and say, well, can I wash your car for $5? Sometimes I would get both gigs. And I started to do this every weekend. And I noticed that, I started to get recurring revenue. Even at age 12, I started saying like 5 or 6 yards, like every weekend I had guaranteed. And then in between those yards, I would just knock on other doors that had tall grass. And eventually the tenacity would open up those opportunities with the other people, because I would just knock on their doors like every Saturday morning. They're like, you again? Like finally they would just cave and be like, dude, just mow the yard. Here's $10, and then I would do a good job. We always got to do a good job. You have to deliver the value.
Right.
So they'd be like, hey, I'm just going to pay this kid $10 every week. I don't have to mow my own yard. Like, this is awesome. Like, and it's funny thing is, like, I got so tired of mowing yards that when I first built my first house, I went and bought a lawnmower, fancy lawnmower, edger, weed eater. And I think I used them like 3 times. And I'm like, you know what? Why the hell am I mowing my own yard? Like, I'm going to go start paying other kids in the neighborhood to mow my yard.
It's like the chef who comes home and doesn't want to cook. It's like,
Totally,
I'm done for the day.
I still don't mow the yard. It's a waste of time, dude. I can go out there and get hay fever and itchy eyes and waste 2 or 3 hours a weekend, and I don't enjoy it. It's like, I could just pay my lawn guy $35 and he does that, and he does it with a smile. It's like, deal.
I used to live in Long Island. That was the easiest thing to do. It's like, here, and they come every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But, that's kind of the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur doesn't need a brochure. You walk up, you knock on the door, you go, hey, look over there. You see your lawn? Looks horrible. And that's enough of a sales tool right there if you know how to do it and you hustle door to door.
Totally. And I think that is it's something we're born with because of requirements. Like you said, you didn't have money. I didn't have allowance. I saw kids that, had nicer things, and, their parents were buying them brand name clothes and stuff like that. I'll tell you, my mom, she wanted to be a seamstress, a tailor her entire life as a young girl. But being in Japanese, when women at that era really made it through junior high, they plucked them out of the school system and they went back and worked on the farms. So she was out there picking fruits and things like that after junior high. And she always regretted not having her full education. So back then, only the men went through basically what was high school, which would be like a junior college to us nowadays. So she really valued education. And I'll tell you that I did not miss a single day of school between kindergarten through graduation.
Now I'm going to ask you a question. Was your mom a typical Japanese mom? Was she tough on you? Was she a tiger mom, as they call them?
Totally. She really didn't take any excuses, and she was very grateful for being here in the United States because of all the opportunities in the school systems and seeing that my sister and I had the good school systems to go to. And it was really she just didn't take no for an answer. And like, unless we were dead, we're going to get on that bus and go to school that day.
Yeah. A friend of mine, Dan Ninen, he's a famous comedian. His mom was Japanese and his dad is from India. So he does the accents. And I'm just like laughing. And when you look at him, he looks both parents, but he talks about all the games he used to play in the car and mom pronouncing this a certain way and all this and fitting in, trying to fit in America. It's kind of interesting. You were different though. And you said this in one of your interviews, and I had to crack up because I rode skateboard as well. You were one of these guys who rode skateboard, learned some tricks, and then you'd teach your friends.
Absolutely. I've always been a teacher.
Yeah, and that kind of set you up for the work that you're doing today. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you say?
Totally, man. I'm coming full circle. So I'll be 47 this week, and I've always been a teacher. I've always been a mentor voluntarily. That's just the role that I've always been destined to do. But I also knew that teachers didn't make any money, and I wanted to make 6 figures and actually have some career success. So I struggled through engineering school. I've got a mechanical engineering degree, and I was not good at math. I was average at math. I was very good at applying myself. I'm not a quitter. I never quit anything. So I'm just basically going to torture myself and go through excruciating pain to get something accomplished, but I will not quit. And so most people think like, you're an engineer, you're highly analytical and this and that. But honestly, all the aptitude tests, all the different things said that I was actually way better at writing and creative side rather than analytical side. So I've learned to evolve.
Well, statistics have also shown there's a huge percentage of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, okay, that don't have a college degree whatsoever. Next on that list, believe it or not, are engineers. Reed Hastings, who founded Netflix, is an engineer. And after he sold his first company, he was, running around with like 100 million in the bank or whatever. And he went to return the VHS tape, The Right Stuff, to Blockbuster, and they charged him $40 in late fees. And if you know, back in 1989 and around there, late fees were $1 billion industry. And folks, there weren't many $1 billion industries, that you could point to back in the late 80s. So late fees were $1 billion industry. And when they went to the government and said, you got to stop this, they were like, whatever. And Blockbuster was like, whatever. And Reed Hastings just got so mad, and he started Netflix. And back then it was very like grassroots effort. You mailed the DVD, and DVDs were new back then. So and you see where it is today. So I want to talk a little bit about this because you and I are entrepreneurs. The driving force of a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of anger, because we're in a day and age where people are like, I started my business because they wanted to help the world kind of thing. But the reality is sometimes we get pissed off and we start the business because we're angry. Let's talk about that.
So the funny thing about this is that my most successful company, the one that had the multiple seven-figure exit, was started on a challenge by some existing service that really called our bluff. So we were all members of this online community. I won't mention the names, but it was another online car community. We were all very active members on this community. The owner of the community at that time was just not a very good steward for maintaining the information in the database. So he wasn't paying his server bill, and the server would just shut the lights off and just delete the entire site. So here we are. We were user-generated content. We were creating the articles, the how-tos, the photos. We were spending a lot of time building all this content for his website. And then it would get deleted and we'd come back and go, hey, guy, why don't you pay your server bill? You have advertising revenue. We know you're making way more than that's what the server costs. It wasn't that busy at the time, probably 10,000 members. And instead of taking constructive feedback from his best and most loyal audience, he said, if you guys think you can do a better job, why don't you go start your own website? And so we kind of gathered around and two of us decided, you know what, I've never started a website, but I think I can figure it out. I mean, it's just software and like uploading it onto a server, and we can figure this out. And if not, we can ask people to help, right? So like, boom, we just started it and said, okay, we're going to go start our own website. And then he was still kind of cocky at that time. He's like, well, when you have more registered members, you can tell me how to run a business. And so within a year, we had already surpassed him. And I made sure to email him and go, hey, Brad, thank you for the motivation for us starting our business. We have more members than you, actually 1.5 times more members than you. So if you'd like to have business lessons from us, we'd be happy to help you out anytime. You know, and so again, we started it as oh yeah, you're going to tell us we can't do it? And you know, that is one of the key things. You don't challenge people like me. You don't challenge people like you, Brad. You don't challenge people who believe in themselves.
I want everybody to write down this message, you know, because I've started several businesses. I've had 9 businesses in my life, and most of them started out of frustration, anger. Entrepreneurs see the world differently. We see a hole, almost always. We see a hole in the market or something that's not being satisfied. And if you do challenge us, you know, I remember my business partner, Doug Cleek, back in the 90s, we started a little internet company. People just were kind of nasty to us because it was just 2 guys in one room. And I remember it was like 18 months later, we have 60 employees and we have offices worldwide, and we went public on NASDAQ, and this one young lady who had treated us horribly, she was begging for a job. I said, you remember how you treated us? I said, I'm surprised you're asking me. You know, I wasn't nice. I mean, I can be a nice guy, but back then I was a little more arrogant. I was furious because they treated us like dirt.
Totally, dude.
Dirt.
Totally.
And I don't know why people do that, but you know, back to what we're talking about, sometimes it's that frustration, that anger, that seeing something that needs to be satisfied, that makes us get up and do it.
We don't complain about things. We solve things. That's what an entrepreneur is. And I want people to understand this, because a lot of people think that in order to be an entrepreneur or multimillionaire, they got to invent something. They always come to me like, I need to invent something, because they hear like apps that get launched, you know, have these multiple 7-8 figure exits. And they always think that they got to be super creative. But guys, you just told me, I told you I just made a better version of what was already existing. So if you can actually make a better product or a better service, only 1% better, very minimal. If you could just improve one aspect of that business or that vertical, you actually may have a viable business, especially when you know it's a multi-million-dollar market share or $1 billion market share.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 problems I see inherent within guys who have a stronger left brain than right brain. And a buddy of mine, I'll give you a good example. Him and a business partner, they were writing a series of books on business and spirituality. You know, how some of the top CEOs are spiritual people and they won't let you know. And so they're going on, and they worked in secret. And one of them was a professor at one of the colleges in New York. So he's telling me this whole story with his business partner. I said, guys, let's go for a walk. So I purposely walked them down the block to Barnes & Noble. They're going on and on about how their book is going to be so unique and original. No one's doing this. And I let them talk, and I secretly walked them right to a huge section on their subject. And so they're talking and they're talking and they're talking. I go, gentlemen, I want to show you that your category is already there in Barnes & Noble. They got so depressed. I think they abandoned the project, but that's not the key. The key is what you just said. Make it better. If you've got 50 of these, that means there's a market. That's number one. Number two, it should stand out. It should be better. You make it brilliant. By the way, I love the title of your book, by the way. It should say that. It should, hit you right in the middle of the eye and make you go, damn, I got to pick that book up. Damn, I got to work with him. He's done extraordinary stuff. So here's what I want to talk about also. You had a choice to design cars or work in the oil industry. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What? Tell that story, because I know you made this decision.
Yeah, the entire purpose for me getting a mechanical engineering degree is because I'm always been a car guy, even since I was a kid. And I thought, it would be awesome to go. I was always a General Motors muscle car fan. I still got 1969 Camaro, Chevelle, things like that. I like old cars, and I like nice. American cars. I like performance cars, classic muscle cars as well.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I wanted to get that degree to go work on the Camaro and Corvettes. That would have been like the dream job for me as an engineer, to go get on the Team Corvette, Team Camaro. That's were the two brands that I liked the most, the two models. And so here I'm in my senior year, and I was already working as a project engineer for a major oil and gas, subcontractor, Brown and Root at the time. They were paying me pretty good salary, project engineering, work in the chemical refineries. And I was doing phone call interviews with the big three in the Detroit area just to kind of talk to them and see what they're about. And they wanted to recruit me, but dude, their offers were literally half the money that I was, making already. And I still had, 9 months left of school. And I was like, why would I move to Detroit from Houston? Because let's be honest, Detroit sucks compared to Houston. I hate that. I hate to say that, but it's true. I've been to both many times. Economics, everything about it, just the weather, anything you compare is like, do we have it better here? I hate to tell you. So, So the thing is like I can move to Detroit and like hold my nose, and make half the money and work on the cars, or I can just stay here, my hometown of Houston, Texas, make twice the money and actually buy the cars that I want to work on. So easy choice.
You and I have a lot in common, but you were better at math. I had two choices in life. I wanted to be an architect and design buildings, like unusual stuff. I was horrible at math, and I didn't have the time. My dad was a chemist and a doctor of chiropractic medicine, so he had the math head. I just didn't have a relationship with him where I could go to my dad and go, hey, Dad, I really don't know how to do this, because he would just call me an idiot or a moron. So it was easier to just avoid him. And then further down the road, when I was about to graduate from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. My degree is in graphic design and illustration and advertising art. And one of the guys there said, hey, General Motors is recruiting artists to go into their training program to design cars. And I guess it's one of those moments in life where you go, I could kick myself because I didn't do it. And do you have a moment in life where you could kick yourself and say, I wish maybe I'd taken that road?
No, I really don't. I really don't dwell on any regrets. I think that if you do that, you start to create this narrative that has no control over your present time. And there's too many people thinking about their past. And I even say that you shouldn't even think about your past if you peaked. There's a lot of people out there that peaked in high school. Maybe they were the all-star athlete, or maybe they're homecoming queen, or they never did anything else with their lives. And if you're listening to this, and maybe you're in the same age demographic, let's say you're in your 40s, 50s, and I want you to really pay attention to this, because maybe you were considered an overachiever back when you were a teenager and in your 20s, and you were just crushing it, and you're just climbing, and then you got in 30s, you started to get a little bit complacent, you got to some comfortable level of income, your belt line started to expand, your house got bigger, your portfolio got bigger. But then you really weren't challenging yourself anymore. And you start to see other people that are half your age just still crushing it and passing you by. And now you don't feel like an overachiever anymore. You're not getting those accolades. You're not seeing the results like you used to, because you slowed your momentum. And you're thinking to yourself, like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm just going through the motions. And that was me in my late 30s. Between 35 and 40, I was like, dude, I made millions of dollars and I did this and this. And it's like, but I was like cruise controlling. Like everything was easy. And I hated it, dude, because I wasn't challenging myself anymore.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, I think what happens is, and I do see this all the time. A friend of mine explained this the very best way. Some people peak in high school, some people peak in college, some people continue to peak throughout their life.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to be the person that would peak throughout life. What drives you personally to keep on peaking? Is that just something innate in you, or do you have to learn that?
I think I've always been that way. I think a lot of times I was counted out, especially when I was younger. My mom, being Japanese, she's only 5 foot tall. Okay.
Right.
And for the longest time, I was wondering if I was going to exceed her height. So I was kind of a late bloomer. I'm 5'11" now, 180. So normal size human, American dude. But I didn't really grow until my junior year of high school. So I was like this smaller dude, and I didn't really have the leadership opportunities. Like you always hear about, like, oh, they teach leadership in public school. Bull crap, man. They just don't, because they hand pick, they cherry pick who they think are going to be the leaders, and then they cultivate those. So your football coaches, your teachers, they always pick their favorites, and they water those flowers, right? And so the rest of us think like, well, I want to be a leader too, but they don't ever give us the attention or the opportunity to do that. So going into the corporate world, I was really driven. My dad was a gunnery sergeant in the Marines. He was a leader. He was always a leader, dude. So I had strong leadership growing up, and I just never got to exhibit that. So I felt like I was counted out from doing those opportunities. And so that's one of the reasons, even in the corporate world, I started creating businesses, Brad, because I wanted to have more responsibilities. I wanted to show that I actually could exceed the roles and responsibilities that they were paying me to do. So if I was coming as a junior engineer, knowing I could manage things, it wasn't being cocky. I actually could do that. I believed in myself, and I trained a few of my own bosses in my career, early in my career. And I was like, dude, this is a bunch of bullshit. Why am I training people to be my boss? Like, give me the job or I'm leaving. And I had to make those threats after a while. And I started to get those promotions because, like, they didn't want to lose me.
Yeah.
So, dude, I just had to really just prove myself to myself. Like, a lot of people try to validate other people. I just want to prove it to myself that I can be better. And I don't like cutting corners, and never have. And when I do, I feel bad about it, and it kind of dwells on me. So I know if I cut corners or half-ass anything, that I'm going to live with those weak-ass results. And it all comes back to you. It's like you're accountable for everything, man.
Yeah. Are you like this? Are you the 100% guy? You either do it or you don't do it?
I think that's out of, with context. Yes, if it's something I have passion for, I go all in, dude. I try to become the best at that as possible, until I get to a point where I realize, hey, I'm actually really, really good at this, and I think I've made my potential in this. Like, okay, what am I going to do next? Like, for me, that was like most recently would be public speaking. I only started doing that 2 years ago, and I think I've gotten a lot better in 2 years.
That's fantastic, man. That's one of my favorite things to do is Keynote.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually started doing stand-up comedy back in the late 90s when I left my company, because I wanted to do it. I wanted to. There's nothing scarier than a comedy club where they're ready to throw beer bottles at you. So when I became a keynote speaker, that was like, people asked me, they're like, aren't you scared? I said, this is not a comedy club in the middle of Connecticut, and there's bikers outside in the parking lot waiting for me. I said, this is a whole different animal. And I think it's fun to tell your stories, especially your story. I love this story. I find it incredibly interesting. This is what makes America great, by the way. Mom and dad just basically looked at you and said, hey, we can't give you the good life. You got to figure it out for your own. How tall was your dad, by the way? Because
5'11", same. We're the exact same height now.
My dad was 6'2", Hungarian, and my mom was 4'10".
Oh wow!
Yeah, and so you would never catch my mom in flats or sneakers. She always wore high heels. Even up until the day she died, she wanted to wear wedges to go to the hospital.
There's dudes wearing high heels.
Yeah, I know. Especially back in the 70s, man. Yeah. Everybody had platform shoes on. Right. But this is kind of the American dream. I mean, you're really living it. I just find it ironic, and you may have found this out. I went to art school, dude, and I have my books are on recommended reading lists for masters and PhDs. And I pinch myself some days, and I want to ask you. Let's get into side hustle, because I know some days you probably pinch yourself, but you're working. You were a mechanical engineer.
That's the degree, but I was more in project management.
Okay, you're in project management. You started these side hustles before people knew what a side hustle was.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain some of those businesses, how you did it, and just what was the process? What were you thinking?
Yeah, this is a good topic because I know that it's becoming more popular, and they're saying that within the next 3 years that 40% of the workforce will also be doing freelance work or side hustles as well. So, dude, I'm at the top of this wave, and what happened is I started to see all these people who are self-proclaimed side hustle experts, and there's a few other podcasts besides mine out there on the subject,
Yeah.
and I started listening to these things because I've done this at a high level. But you know what, Brian? It was very depressing to hear some of these shows and read some of these books because they teach people to think too damn small, man. Like there are
It's
people
true.
like, oh, if you work really hard and you do these and you hand build these widgets, you can make $300 a month.
Yeah,
And
I'm not
dude, like
interested in
I'm
that.
thinking like $300. It's like I can make that on one transaction. Like, why do I want to wait a whole month to make $300? Like, what am I doing with this? Like, this is terrible information, guys. If you're listening to shows teaching you how to make $300 a month, challenge yourself, guys, because this is not about time equals money. That's another fallacy that people get into.
Yep.
We can make money. Like you and I could be we probably are making money sitting here right now without having to clock in or be somewhere or build something with our hands, things that don't scale. So nowadays with this digital platform and no gatekeepers to distribution to get your message and your products out there in front of consumers, you only have the excuse of looking in the mirror. That's really the reason you're not making $30,000 extra a month, right? So people think this and they see the side hustle millionaire title and they go, oh yeah, nobody can make a millionaire, being a side hustle. Like, no, that you're full of shit, because I know a lot of people that have made millions of dollars. They're just not willing to share those secrets of the story because they're not the right person to stand in front of a camera. And that was me 2 years ago. I did not have the confidence to stand in front of a camera or stand on a stage 2 years ago. I was extremely successful, helped all my friends, the close friends. I've helped build 7- and 8-figure companies with friends. And they'd always tell me, Tony, you should be doing this full time. And I give them the same bullshit. Well, I got this career. I'm a project manager working a major oil company, and I'm so busy and I'm always traveling around and I've got these side businesses that I'm doing. I just don't have time to teach. And it was just a bullshit narrative that I would tell myself to avoid being that person to stand in front of the camera. And so I had a near-death experience. I almost wrecked a car, a race car.
Wow.
So a lot of manufacturers and performance shops would throw me the keys to their 1,000-horsepower cars to go extract the best quarter-mile times or the best lap times out of them. And I was in an accident one night, and I really thought I was going to die in that moment. I was approaching a concrete wall at the drag strip at about 130 miles per hour in a Dodge Viper. So bad odds, right? And I remember even as I was aiming at that wall, steering wheel was going straight, but the car was going sideways, right? So I remember muttering to myself, well, here I go. And in that moment, it seemed like an eternity. And of course, I survived that impact without any injuries, any major injuries. But it's just like, it really gave me an eye-opener for really that entire week after that. I started thinking to myself, what if I had died that night? What if I had died that night? What would people have remembered me for? And you start thinking about it, and like I've had a lot of friends in this car scene and the motorcycle scene that passed away from racing accidents. And it's always like, so-and-so was a nice guy. So-and-so had some cool cars. And some of the listeners may be like, well, that's not a bad way to be, go out. I was like, well, that's not good enough, dude, because I always knew that I would become more successful. I've always attracted money. I always knew that I would become more millionaires and this and this and that. But at the end of the day, it would have been like, Tony was a nice guy. He was successful and he had a bunch of cool cars. And I think that's fucking shallow, man. Like I've only helped the people that knew me and that were in my direct proximity. And I have the story and the knowledge to share that I'm just being a coward, really. And I called myself out. I was like, you need to quit being a bitch, Tony. You need to just invest in yourself. I know public speaking's scary, and I know putting yourself out there is scary. And I know that you don't have these skills yet, but thousands of other people have that exact same problem. They were able to solve that by finding the people that can help them and joining groups like Toastmasters and just making themselves really fucking uncomfortable and putting themselves out there and just repetition and repetition.
Yep.
That's how we get stronger. That's how we get better. And that's what I did, man. I just joined and I went all in. And that's really but the last 2 years. So everything you see me standing on these big stages, the 1,500 people in the audience and the top rated podcast and all these different things that I'm doing, that was only from 2 years ago. I started in June of 2017. It wasn't that long ago.
That's incredible. I take my hat off to you, brother, because I started professionally speaking about 2008, 2009. I had spoken before that. I mean, I got on stage with my mom at 9 years of age, but I hid behind the drum set.
Mm-hmm.
I was a drummer.
Yep. You're in the back of the stage.
Yeah. And all I got to do is follow the notes.
Yep.
And I don't even have to do scales, man. I just got to play.
Dude, I have a friend that you'll probably relate to this. I've got a friend that's an amazing drummer, And he's also an amazing lead guitarist, but he always took the drums because he never wanted to stand in the spotlight.
Yeah, that's the scary part. And I remember stepping to the forefront. I had friends hire me, and I spoke at different events. But once I said yes to speaking and being a keynote speaker, I took all that experience as a C-level executive of a publicly traded company. I took all my stand-up comedy experience and then all my crazy stories about my dad, and I just put that together as lessons for corporations and how to manage people. And I got to tell you, you're probably learning this as well. It's probably one of the most rewarding things you can do, because once they see you, they hear your vulnerability, and you're not a bullshit artist. They want to reach out and say, man, that dude can help me. And that's really why you're doing it. I mean, people think this is done out of ego. It's it's done out of generating income. But the reality is you really want to share this with people, because you could just let your businesses run every day, that you've created. You could step away from that. And you could sit and watch TV all day and race bicycles now, but the reality is you're here to help people. You're here to have an impact or a mission on earth. And I love that you are doing that. Now, I want to ask you, when did you finally figure out you need to quit your day job?
It decided that for me, because it was an oil industry downturn about 3 years ago. And I already knew that I was going to get laid off because we were already in the middle of a downturn. And I was on a major project out of South Africa. So we were finishing up a project, and we knew we had 9 months left to hit first oil, and that we knew that the entire team was basically going to get laid off at the end of this. We knew this. So we had 9 months of really to just execute while having that over our shoulders. Talk about stress and anxiety and low morale, but we still delivered.
Right.
So when that happened, I was just really burned out and exhausted from traveling. And, that's a long, extreme, $200 million project is really, really active, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts. And you think about that as I flew back through France, and I actually flew my wife over, and we just spent like a couple of weeks just driving around France and drinking wine and just relaxing and just unwinding from that project and that stress. And so I was like, you know what? I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. I'm tired of my livelihood being somebody else's decision. Like, I've owned businesses for the last 20 years, and they were all part-time. Yeah. Many of them made six figures, income. So it's like, why am I putting all the I guess, trust into these ineffective managers and people that make decisions over my livelihood? Why am I not betting more on myself instead of betting on them? So if you're listening to this and you don't like your boss and you don't like your career, you don't like the career trajectory you're on, realize that you're putting more trust in people that don't have your best interest in mind instead of yourself. And that's really fucked up when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, I was chuckling earlier because when you took your wife to France, I'm thinking best husband ever. Oh yeah,
we love to travel. We definitely love to travel.
But then the second side of this is like, if anybody's listening, I started all my first freelance business when I was an adult was, I guess I was 1987. I went freelance. And from that moment on, I always had projects at home. I had projects at studios. I didn't have breaks. And one of my friends, Frank, he had a job. And one day, this is maybe 10, 15 years ago, he says to me, so what are you doing now that, you're done with that gig? And I'm like, well, I have about 2.5 months off. And he goes, you lazy, blah, blah, blah. And I just looked at him shocked because I had 3 projects and I hope to get some of them done in that 3-month period. And I'm talking working every day. Mm-hmm. One of them was also writing my book, Liquid Leadership. The other was, some marketing and some videos and working for other clients. And I don't think that's a natural thing for most people to realize that when they come home, I put on the TV, but I listen to the TV. I'm working. I mean, it's background noise. It really is. It's either jazz, rock and roll with no words in it, or I got my computer on and maybe there's a football game on or a comedy that I've heard 100 times. It's filler. I don't have time to really sit around and just enjoy certain things. I'll go to a movie once in a while, but that coming home and setting up a project, I really have to thank my dad for that. And I'm going to ask you, did your dad do the same thing or your mom do the same thing? Like, you come home and you better have something to do, young man. Is that kind of, they weren't like that?
Definitely not. It's funny that you mentioned that because the whole That what you just described was the transitional mindset from employee to full-time entrepreneur. And the thing is that I've only gone through that the last 3 years of my life.
Wow.
So although I've owned businesses that were highly successful, here's the mental programming that we're raised with, okay? Is we're small children, especially when you got working class parents that are really blue collar hard workers.
Yeah.
This is middle America. If you're middle America, pay attention to this because you've got this programming inside your brain and you don't even realize it's programmed in your subconscious. You truly believe that having an employment is like a necessity of life. Like to not have a job is one of the scariest fucking things in your life. And that's what my parents had. Like, and every time I remember my dad would get laid off. He was in the oil and gas industry as well. So he would get laid off. And I remember like the stress in that household for that whole period of time when he didn't have a job and he's looking for the next job. And then my mom worked in the public school systems as a cafeteria worker. So not a high level of income. So I just remember all these stresses about just, if you don't have a job, you're failing at fucking life and people are going to judge you and it's going to be very stressful and it's going to just ruin your life. And so you have these self-programmed things into you that thinking that you need a job, like you have to have a job to, define who you are and pay the bills. And I get all that. We got bills to pay. But the problem is when you go through a public school system, they're made purposely to churn out employees. We never hear about entrepreneurship in public school system. We don't even know that's an option. We just think that business owners are reserved for rich families and only rich people can do that. And only rich people own businesses. That's bullshit because nowadays it's never been easier to own a business. It's never been easier. Like back when you and I started like late 80s, 90s, like it was actually tough to start a business. You had to actually have some money to start. You didn't have we had too many gatekeepers to reach our audience. Nowadays, like social media, like come on, man. Like you have excuses now.
It is. I mean, it's so easy to start a business nowadays. And I realized when I started K2, if I tried to start that today, I couldn't because things have evolved so much. Mm-hmm. People can build their own websites. So I just started a business now. And the reality is we're providing all that social media services, branding, getting people on TV, helping you write your books, getting everything out there. Website design is like at the bottom of the list because anybody can do it now. So
they made it easy for everybody.
Yeah,
like all the WYSIWYGs, the what you see is what you get websites, drag and drop. But you know what? It works. It works.
Does totally works.
Totally works.
But this is the magic moment that an entrepreneur, and it's scary to step away from the job, but you plan it. I mean, I'm not saying you go. I'm telling Mort off tomorrow. When I get into work, I'm telling him to go to hell. Yeah. No, you plan at night. You get home, you have dinner, you tell your wife or you tell your husband, I'm going to work on the business now. Totally. And you may find yourself up till 11 o'clock at night, midnight. And now when the business starts making more money than your day job, maybe you can balance and figure out, hey, do I quit or do I hire an assistant? It's that kind of balance. But I want you to talk about this. A lot of people, they want to be entrepreneurs. They really shouldn't. Because all they do is they create another JOB for themselves rather than a business that has systems that generates income while they're sitting on their ass or sleeping. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, a lot of people want to monetize their skill set or their talent or their knowledge. And that's a good start. But the problem is they don't become business owners. They don't become business minded. They don't understand business skills, marketing, strategy, accounting, all these hats that you're going to have to initially wear until you start to scale it to some kind of a size where you can bring on staff or freelancers and people to help you. So you have to invest in the knowledge and the skill sets that you have on top of the business skills. And so I see a lot of people, especially in the automotive scene, like there's a lot of good mechanics that watch their boss sitting in that air-conditioned office and he's got the newer pickup truck and they're like, well, I can do this. I'm a great mechanic. I can start my own business. And they go do that and they fall flat on their face and they're huge debt and they just bite off more than they can chew in the first year and they don't understand why they fail because they're a good mechanic. Just because they didn't walk away from the tools. They didn't become a business owner. They built themselves, like you said, a job and they just out there still turning the wrenches and there's nobody to do the marketing. There's nobody to have the vision to grow the company. There's nobody to monitor the money and then just fall to pieces. So you have to, if you're wanting to start a business, you need to invest, listen to podcasts, read books, hire a business coach like myself, do something, get some information. Like you're going to shortcut this process. Like if you have money, you can shortcut time. If you don't have money, you got a lot of time on your hands. You got to read a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of information out there, but you have to invest equally in becoming a business owner.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to reach out to Tony Whatley. I want you to hire him because he'll take you to another level. A lot of people out there who claim to be speakers and have written books, and I would actually estimate 95% of business leaders and all these people telling you all this great stuff have never owned a business and have never broken through $1 million a year. Okay, so your top people that you love and Harvard professors, these people have never owned a business.
Dude,
okay?
it gets even worse than that.
Yeah.
New York Times bestsellers. How many of those have you read? They're amazing books. You read them and then you go, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about this author. Like, let me go find like what he did before this book. And then you go fire up the Google machine and you realize like this person didn't do shit before this book came out.
Nope. That's why I started becoming a keynote speaker, because I used to do big corporate meetings, and I remember they gave me the cheat sheet for this meeting they were trying to pitch to IBM.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the pitches they had this comedian who was young. He was going to perform one of the nights. The MC was some guy who had a business background. Oh, they were so impressed. And then Billy Joel was going to close the whole thing. And I saw what the guy was going to make, and I said, he's going to make 50 grand for the weekend, or probably 25. They were charging 50. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at his book, I looked at his resume, and I went, I have a better resume than this dude. And I said, what the hell am I doing sitting here? You know, I had a good day rate, to design for these people, but I was just like, it's a hell of a lot better to charge 15 grand to do a keynote than it is, to have, several days worth of work. So I want people to understand that Tony's the real deal. How do we get a hold of you, Tony, if we need to?
My website is 365driven.com, and you'll find everything about me on that one website. So I've got the best-selling book, Side Hustle Millionaire. I'm very active on Instagram, and I've got a top 100 rated entrepreneurship podcast, which is also called 365 Driven.
Yeah, Tony's the real deal, man. We don't put bullshit artists on this show. I love what you're doing. I love the journey that you've had. I mean, it's funny in one way, and it's the American dream on the other way, and it's incredible. Tell us about writing the book, Side Hustle Millionaire. Was that fun, or was that a pain in the butt? Because I know when I was writing my first book, I felt like I had to do 100 essays for English class. And I love the process, but now I look back and I went, God, that was painful.
So for some context, I actually love writing. It's one of the things I enjoy most. And whether that's books or speeches, I love writing. So I've always been a creative writer. I've always been an artistic mind, an artist building things. And I used to be a photojournalist for automotive magazines. So I used to do photography and write the emotional type drawing type copywriting for the articles. They want you to draw them in, right? So I would tell all these heart-throbbing stories of why this car meant someone to someone's family and these things and that. So understand that was the context. That was 20 years ago. I've been doing that, freelance doing that, and I enjoyed it. But the book, Side Hustle Millionaire. So first of all, the title, you mentioned that you like the title because it's like that punch you in the face thing, and I agree now. But when I wrote the manuscript, it was called The Hustle. Right. Because I used to be a competitive collegiate champion in 9-ball billiards. And so I kind of like, it's a play on word. The word hustle is like, a trendy word now. And it's like, okay, like it's kind of throwback to my old, pool days and business day. I thought it was I thought it was catchy, man. I thought it was catchy.
Minnesota Fats. Yeah.
Dude, so I submitted to the copy editor, and he reads the book and he's like, dude, this is an awesome book. It's going to sell well. And I was like, thanks, man. He goes, but this title sucks. I was like, what are you talking about? And so I gave him the same explanation I just gave you and your listeners now. And he's like, dude, it still sucks. He goes, you're the Side Hustle Millionaire. And at first, like, I'm not an arrogant dude. I'm not pompous. I'm very humble. And I'm like, I don't know if I like that. Like, that's kind of like in your face. And he's like, what are you going to dispute about that title? Did you not earn millions from a side business? Like, yeah, because then you're the Side Hustle Millionaire. Like, how many other people that did that? And I said, well, other than my business partner and one other person that had an exact same business model that sold at the same time, like 3 of us for sure. And he's like, exactly. So 2 other people that have accomplished that. So how many other people out in the world do you think there are? And I was like, well, holy shit, he's true. So I said, you know what? Let me sleep on this because it's still kind of a weird title to me. And the next day I woke up and I said, fuck, that's my story. I need to quit being a bitch. I need to learn how to step into my story, because anyone that laughs at that title, and I'm sure people see it and they probably roll their eyes until they read it. And then they go, holy shit, this guy actually did this. This is not some bullshit, headline news copy title that just grabs your attention.
Yeah.
It's like, it's legit. So I wanted people to understand, like, that is my story. And honestly, it took me like 3 months after that book released. It already hit #1 on the business marketing category, made number 11 on all of personal development books on Amazon. And it still took me 3 more months to like really feel comfortable about that title. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. I can understand that, but I have a marketing background. So as soon as I hear that, I went, damn, does he know how, and the fact that you got it first.
Yeah.
Is amazing, because in this day and age, you look for your URL, it's gone, baby. you gotta find it. You got it, and I'm blown away because that title it's in your face. It's like a martial art punch right in the face.
Yeah, and the book itself was in my head for about 4 or 5 years. So I knew that the only way I could get my message out there on a massive scale was to be able to create something that could be told without me having to narrate it one-on-one. So I've always wanted to write a book, because although I had been a photojournalist and I'd been a contributing editor and a writer, all these titles, I always had a lot of respect for authors, but you have to write a book to become an author. So I said, okay, someday I'm going to become an author. I love books. I've always read books, probably 1 a week. And then I said, okay, I'm going to write a book. So here I am operating entrepreneurship at a medium to high strategic level. I'm thinking, like, I'm going to teach these high level strategies, and I'm going to teach people how to make all this millions of dollars, right? And how to scale their companies. And so what I did is I got on my social media and said, hey guys, I'm going to write a book on teaching you how to start a business. What questions would you like answered? Because I'm always good at testing and validating the item before I spend a dime or my time on it. Dude, the questions most people are asking were very basic. Like, I want to know LLC versus S Corp. I want to know marketing. I want to know positioning, branding. How do you name your company? Like very like entry level stuff. Someone that just starting into entrepreneurship,
right?
And things that we take for granted, Brad, because you and I have been doing it for so long. So I was like, I started to watch, and I was like, dude, I had to pay attention to the audience. That's what they want from me, is the basics. Yeah. So I said, okay, if I can answer every one of these questions at a high level of detail and give them reasons and data to help them along this process, and create this really a step-by-step process of taking your idea all the way to operation, I'm going to write that book. So that became Side Hustle Man. It's really to take your idea of your businesses, or maybe have 5 or 10 ideas, because everybody thinks they're badasses because they got ideas, but they don't ever take action. I help you evaluate your ideas against each other, find the best ones for the odds of success, and give you that platform and figure out how to position yourself, market it, brand it, and get you into operation.
This is a tremendous service that you do, because I run into people all the time who were successful, let's say C-level guys, upper management, and then they get a lump sum payout and they say goodbye. And then they go, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And they step up to the plate and they have this attitude like, I was so successful over here, I can do it over here. And they burn through their entire savings.
They lose it all. We've seen it all. We've seen it. We've seen it.
And it's like, because they don't, it's really easy to spend other people's money and manage and do all that other stuff. When you're an entrepreneur, guess what? You may have to be the one changing the garbage pail on a Saturday and sweeping the floor for a little while until that business takes off. But I love what you're talking about. It reminds me of E-Myth Revisited with Michael Gerber. Yep. You got to stop working in your business and creating a JOB for yourself and work on the business, which a lot of people don't do. They get caught up in, I have to be there every day, or, whatever. Maybe you have a storefront, maybe you have software, maybe you have whatever, but you have to think now in this day and age a little differently. And that is, how can I expand and grow without so much of me being present in that? It's got to become an actual business, not you showing up and having a JOB and a lot of great employees around you. That's not fun anymore. And we have the ability, that the barrier to entry is so low nowadays. Anybody can do this. They really can. It's now you have to surround yourself with the mentors and the smart people who've done it already to help you through those bumps and those quagmires there. So Tony, I want to thank you for being on Awakened Nation, and we're going to go into the lightning round where I ask you 3 questions so we get to know you a little bit better. Besides being a car guy,
let's do this.
Let's do it. All right. What about you that people would be surprised about that they don't know about you?
I think one of the most obscure things people always ask me how I met my wife. We just had our 14th anniversary, and
Oh,
I actually
wow.
met her at Western ballroom dance class. So
Wow.
I can actually dance really well.
You can move those hips.
That's it. And she wouldn't have married me if I couldn't dance.
You're like part Latino, part
No,
side hustle
well, yeah, I could
millionaire,
be. Yeah.
yeah, you could be on Dancing with the Stars.
Let's be honest, Brad. A guy learns how to dance to pick up women,
You
and
damn
it worked.
Skippy.
It worked
You
really
da-
well. It was efficient.
You're damn Skippy. I know what you're talking about. Second question. I know you're Japanese on the family on your mom's side. Do you have favorite Japanese dishes, or do you like other foods? Just love other foods.
I tend to not like any Japanese like sushi. People always asking me about that, but I'm really not a
Yeah,
fan of seafood or sushi. I grew up here in the States, and I like American food, man.
nice. That's good. Yeah, I have a couple of friends from India. They don't like Indian food.
Man,
I'm
I
like,
love
really?
Indian food. I love
Yeah, me
Indian
too.
food. Yeah.
If you sit me in an Italian restaurant, Mexican restaurant, Indian restaurant,
hmm
Japanese restaurant, just keep your hands away from my face because I'm eating everything. I
That's
just
it.
love that. That's incredible. What is your favorite memory?
Wow. I think probably when my son was born, even though he scared me to death because his mouth was really big and he was screaming really loud at the top of his lungs. And I was like, oh my God, this is my kid. So,
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, dad. Well, congratulations, man. 14 years, children. Your wife must love you to death because you took it to Paris, baby. You took it to France.
yeah, we love world travel. That's her love. She got me into doing that. And we try to go somewhere usually overseas every year for sure.
That's awesome. I love when I hear good couples getting along, doing stuff, and understanding what you do for a living. One last question. I'm just going to throw it out there. Have you seen, or are you going to see Ford versus Ferrari? I'm assuming you're going to go see that.
I definitely want to see the movie. I've been seeing the skits of it and I know the history of it. And it looks like it's
Yeah,
pretty good cinematography. And I'm a sucker for car movies. But honestly, we don't spend a lot of time at theaters or watching TV, like you said, because that's productivity time. And, to me, like priorities matter. And it may just be one of those things I catch on an intercontinental flight when I'm like,
yeah,
when the movie's like 6 months old.
yeah. Like watching Nick Cage and Going in 60 Seconds or whatever.
Dude,
It's like,
I think I see all of my movies. I think I see all of my movies on flights, to be honest. Like airplanes are my movie theater.
yeah. I almost went out to Hollywood, so I'm obsessed with movies, but I like good stuff, good science fiction, things like that. So, anything you want to tell our listeners in parting? How do they get a hold of you? Obviously,
Well,
once again.
365driven.com is where you'll find all my
Yep.
social medias. I'm very active on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And, if you have questions, like feel free to reach out. If you had any
Yeah.
comments from this episode, I'd love to hear from you. Don't be shy. But the thing is, I want to give a little closing here on how to get people started because I think a lot of people are just really scared of really like we have this bullshit line that we tell people we're scared of failure or fear of failure. It's not true. We fail all the time. Like I go to the gym 6 days a week. That last set, you always fail in the last rep. That's what makes you stronger, guys. You understand that failure is part of the process. We all fail at something every day. We cut corners somewhere every day. We're not doing things that we should. We're not as disciplined as we could be. So get that out of your mind. What we're really afraid of, Brad, is what people will think about our failures. So when you think about that, so we're really not doing what we should be doing. We're not pursuing our passions or our dreams because we're really just worried about what other people say or think. And I want to get you a fast forward here. So there's a mortality thought about this. It's like not only thinking about how people are going to remember you, but think about if you make it to your ripe old age and you're in your deathbed, the number one thing that people regret is regret. They just regret not doing things. You'll never find somebody laying in their deathbed regretting things that they did and failed at. They always regret not trying or not asking out that woman that they were in love with or not doing that job opportunity or starting that business that they could do. So it's always these regrets, and you can always live your entire life by avoiding those regrets, by just taking those actions. And the thing is that those people that you're worried about right now, listen to this. If you're worried about those critics or those potential critics, because we all make a lot of shit up in our mind about these potential critics.
Yeah.
You're so worried about those people. Understand that those people that you're so fearful of will not be standing there at your deathbed. They're not going to be there. So you're going to let these fucking asshole people run your entire life and prevent you from pursuing your dreams. They're not going to be there at your deathbed. So they're not going to be at your funeral. Don't let them run your life.
I love your style, man. Tony Whatley, reach out to him, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being on Awakened Nation, Tony. Take care, everybody. See you next week on Awakened Nation. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.